Well, thank you very much, Yuri, for that introduction. It's great to be back in Estonia, and I really love to be in this wonderful hall. It's a very beautiful building and a beautiful hall. We have heard a few words about excellence. Excellence is not an all that easy concept to divide. I would take a pretty narrow, straightforward perspective of excellence, and my perspective is: how do we, at the national level, contribute to the international discussion of advancement of science, advancement of our understanding of nature and society? And what happened a few years ago was that the Swedish Research Council did bibliometric studies, and they were looking at impact of Swedish research on the international scene. And to our surprise, Sweden wasn't doing all that well, although we are very productive. And we said something has to be wrong. We cannot trust this kind of impact studies. But the Research Council tended to come back every second year with new reports, and we all said something has to be wrong. But eventually, at the academies, we said, let's look deeper into this. It might actually have something to tell us about our research system. Does our research system foster the kind of research that has an international impact at a reasonably high level? So I, together with Mats Benner, he's professor in social science, policy science in Lund, we set out to do a study, and we did the study together with the Research Council. The Research Council did the bibliometric stuff, and we took responsibility for doing the analysis. And the aim was really to answer why Swedish research is losing in international competitiveness. This is what it looks like. Look at the blue curves. This is impact studies of publications, and the database is Web of Science. It includes all subject fields. They have some 252 subject fields defined across all disciplines. So it's a Thomson Reuters database used here. And this is our global figures. And look at the blue line. And you can see over 20 years' time here, we have had a much more positive development in Denmark, Switzerland, and Netherlands than we have had in Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And what's defined here is the so-called top 10% index. It's the 10% of the publications that come out that are most highly cited. And this is the top 10 index. If you publish at this level, I think it's more likely that you are a significant part in the international discussion of the advancement of science than if you don't appear at this level. You can question that, but that has been our rationale behind these studies. You can see that Denmark in particular has had a very positive development. Switzerland has stayed up there, and Netherlands has been doing very well. Norway, Sweden, and Finland has all improved. But today, the horizontal line is the world average. Today, Finland, Sweden, and Norway, we are 7 to 15% above world average when it comes to impact at this level. Whereas Denmark, Switzerland, and the Netherlands, they are at the range of 35 to 40% above world average, and then they are at the same level as the United States. This is a table. It might be a little bit difficult for you behind there to see all the figures, but you have a number of subject fields represented in each country, and to be represented here you have to have at least 10 publications per year. And in Sweden we are represented in 190 of the 252 fields defined. And the number here is roughly proportional to the population of the country. Let's look at top index 1.5. That means that you are performing 50% above world average. Sweden has, when we come to that level, are represented in 30 subject fields, Norway in 20 and Finland in 16 fields. But look at Denmark. They are represented in 50 different fields. And Netherlands and Switzerland are even better. And this difference is emphasized when you go to the 10% top index of 2. That means twice world average. Then let's look at the second table from the left. That's top 10% index below 0.8. That means 20 or lower percentage in comparison to the world average. Here, suddenly Sweden, Norway and Finland are doing pretty well, whereas Denmark, particularly Netherlands and also Switzerland, apparently avoid to nurture weak performing subject fields. What this shows is that we, in the more Nordic country, we definitely have research groups that perform at the world top. We have excellent science, but it also shows that the number of scientists represented by different subject fields is lower in Sweden, Norway and Finland than it is in Denmark, Switzerland and the Netherlands. So in order for us in the Nordic countries to sort of go up in performance here, that's not so much of making the best science even better. It's a question of lifting up the more mediocre parts of our scientific system. That is the challenge. We can look at universities. Here we have a relative frequency distribution of universities and institutes. It's mainly universities. And to qualify here, you need to publish at least 50 publications per year. Relative frequency, again, against the 10% top index. Look at Sweden. We are just a little bit above world average with our universities. Finland and Norway is pretty similar. But look at Denmark, they are well above world average. And of course Switzerland is doing extremely well, the Netherlands. So it's quite clear that in Sweden, Denmark and Norway, we cannot really talk about elite universities. I think Denmark can to some extent do it because their technical university is doing extremely well today and as part of the good figures here. So this is the situation defined by these kind of publication statistics. This is a little bit difficult, and Norway is not included in this figure, but it shows the relative renewal rate between the years 2001 and 2008. And it's 48 subject fields in this slide, and they are defined according to the Brew definition. So this shows newcomers during this period that has started to perform and appear at this level in the international literature. And if you really, want to have a look into a bright research future, then the dots should be up here, but they are down here. And in a way, I think none of the countries is doing all that well here, but clearly I can see that this is a result of a neglection of providing good career opportunities for young people during the last 20 years. And in fact, Denmark, Switzerland and Finland and the Netherlands are doing slightly better. This is bibliometric studies. There are problems with bibliometric studies. Impact studies is just one dimension of excellence in research, but I think it's important to be part of international discussion on the advancement of science, and it is an expression of that. So, what kind of pitfalls do we have here now? Because there are a number of things that can go wrong when you do these kind of things. There might be different proportion of publications not receiving any publications at all. That would bias the statistics here. Surprisingly, this figure is pretty constant. It's about 25% in all the countries. So about 25% of what is published is never cited within a time frame of 3 years after the publication. It's the same in all countries, even in the high performers like Switzerland. Can we have different ratio between national and international authors on publications, or do we have different degrees of collaboration with other countries? No, it's very much the same. We are all very international in our work. Do I have different degrees of interdisciplinarity that might affect this kind of publication statistics? No, we seem to have the same development here. We become more and more interactive across disciplines. Self-citation has been said as a mean by which you can affect your publication statistics. Degree of self-citation. There are some variations between the countries, but they are very small. Cannot explain the big difference we see in the impact. Different proportions between subject areas. There are some differences, but in all these countries, life sciences have been growing immensely, and it cannot explain the difference we see in publication statistics. So the impact figures that we define here, they are real. So now, why are Finland, Norway and Sweden playing in a lower division than Denmark, the Netherlands and Switzerland? And I also want to say that the political ambition expressed in all these countries, it is that academic excellence at the global level is something to strive for. But why are some countries performing better than others? And I can tell you already now, it's definitely not a question of money. It is a question of how we use the money. And I can also say now that it is the universities that are the bottleneck. That's where we have the weak link for fostering research at the highest competitive level in international terms. So we took a 20-year historical perspective. We looked back in time, looked at priority setting at national level, governance of universities, decision of funding of research. And I cannot cover all these aspects today, but I'm going to give you a picture. So it was me and Mats Benner who sort of wrote the report. Olle Persson, Umeå University, and Staffan Karlsson, Research Council, they did the bibliometric stuff. And then we had an analysis group, and Professor Corvaisier, who is with us here today, he served on this group from Switzerland, Ole Feierskov from Denmark, Eila Helander from Finland, and Jos van der Meer from the Netherlands. And then we added some Swedes to sort of get the disciplinary coverage. And this guy is an important guy, Christian Broberger. At that time, he was the president of the Swedish Young Academy and brought in perspectives of young people. This analysis group helped us to analyze the data and really provided the sort of basis for the report. Now I take Sweden as an example because I know Sweden best, but this is very much analysis of the system in not only Sweden, it's always also Norway and Finland, and I will make references to those countries who perform better in this kind of bibliometric statistics. First of all, our universities, they are extremely heterogeneous in task, in terms of education and research. And this multitude of activities often have different and conflicting goals. Just imagine that all post-gymnasial education academic as well as professional. They are all under the umbrella of the university. Research at this highest international level, as well as research in the sort of interest of the nations, so sectorial research, as well as research and development in the regional context, is all under the university umbrella. So if you go into a faculty and look at the professors and lecturers there, it might only be a majority actually of the staff that has the ambition to work at this international level. And I'm pretty convinced that the effect of putting everything within the same organization, that has diluted the focus on highest international quality. If we look at Switzerland and if we look at the Netherlands, they have not gone this way. They have maintained an academic focus in their university, and I think with that focus they can have a stronger focus on academic excellence at this level. We see the same situation in Norway. They have the same problem. Finland has the same problem. Denmark has gone a little bit in this direction, but they have refrained from going as far as we have done in Sweden and Norway. This is a reality, and we need to deal with this kind of problems. How to combine the mass university role with the elite university. We have today in our universities in Sweden weak recruitment policies. We basically promote our own. We have a promotion system that if you are a lecturer and have reached a certain level, then you more or less have the right to become professor. This has completely stopped all kind of mobility. You start as a PhD student at your university, and if you are good enough, you will be able to make your career there up into the system. So we have a notoriously weak recruitment system today, and it does not at all match the international standard that high-performing universities have today. High-performing universities, you know, if we look at Switzerland and Holland, they are ruthless on recruitment. And if you talk to a vice chancellor in Switzerland and ask, what is your most important task? That is to see to that recruitment is at the highest international level. We have lost that. We have an inbreeding system in Sweden. We have it in Norway. We also have it in Finland. And I think this is one of the major weaknesses of our Nordic university. Denmark has also a little bit of this, but not to the same extent. They have remained more of a focus on international recruitment, or provide conditions that is of interest for people, talented people coming from abroad to Denmark. We have very weak career system for young researchers. I mentioned that initially. The young generation has very much had to sort of take protection behind the older generation, behind my generation. And this is something we have to change. We need to foster the kind of renewal that comes with giving young people opportunities to pursue their ideas and test their questions. That is a type of renewal that we are not very good at. We are doing things now to correct this, but it will take time before it is fixed. What has happened is that we have also tied up all our resources in positions. And you know, this means basically stagnant universities. And in order to be operative, we have to go outside and ask for money. And that means that it's external money that very much governs what you are doing. Some of the money you get are on a competitive scale through research council and foundation, where there are really scientific scrutination. But a lot of the money come to the university just based on relevance, without being filtered through rigorous scientific evaluation. That kind of money have effect on what's going on. So we have a problem here. And when we compare with other countries, Switzerland, Holland, they haven't fallen into this trap. They still have significant money to provide as a basic funding when they recruit, they give startup grants. We have no money to give out international competitive startup grants today. So we are stuck with the problem here. Now this is realized, we try to do something about it. Research Council in collaboration with universities. But this is one of the things that has to be fixed if we want to improve. What we have seen over the last 20 years also, I would say in the more Nordic countries, is a relative decrease of investigator-initiated projects and programs. But instead we have invested more money in strong environments, in strategic areas, in networking. You may call it centers of excellence. This is fine. But I would say for a healthy research environment, such investments have to build on investigator-initiated projects and programs, involving also the influx of younger generation. And I think the investments that we are doing now in this big enlargement, that's too top-heavy. I think we need to rebalance this, and I'm pretty sure that the way is to identify individuals with great ideas, support them at a level that they are qualified to handle. This is a difficult point. When I bring up this at home, say we have a weak academic leadership, you can understand that many of the vice chancellors become upset. But I think it's true, and it has triggered a very important discussion at home. We have today a weak academic leadership at all levels, vice chancellors, deans, department chairs. But what we have is managers. We have had a tendency to choose managers rather than strong academic leaders. And I can understand that, because the university is such a complex structure to handle. But with an academic with a leadership that doesn't understand how to strive for excellence in research, it's a problem. And I think now I'm pretty sure that in the next phase of electing our leaders, we will go for stronger scholars at the leadership level. External funding really governs what we are doing at Swedish university, very much so in Norwegian university, and definitely so also in Finland. We have a syndrome that universities are more what I would call research hotel, funded externally, and these good scientists that do good science, they don't really care very much about the university, because they have all their degrees of freedom outside. And these strong environments that you see in a university setting, they are not contagious. They are sort of enclosed, and they don't influence and help to lift more mediocre environments. So this is a problem for our university. If the university wants to play its important role for excellence, it has to take a grip of its own development. Just this case, we have a large number of faculty positions funded by external money. when I say this to a vice chancellor in Switzerland, they just look at me and say, how come? Same in Holland, same in Denmark. So we have gone this way. And as it's the strong scientists that bring in the money, they push people into the system, the university system effectuates with positions at different levels. So the recruitment is actually pushed in from below. And as long as there is money, the university comes up with the positions. That's not a good way to go if you want to foster excellence. We have today university block funding, external funding, lower than 50-50. In Finland, it's 40-60. And I really think when we look at the high-performing universities, you have to have at least 60-40 here. In Switzerland, it's 80-20. Norway is a very extreme example. They have this figure 70-30, the same level as Holland. But since the Norwegian has tied up all their money in positions, they are, to do research, completely dependent on external money. So to summarize, key factors of foster academic excellence as we see it from our studies. That is to have a strong academic leadership that has a focus on academic excellence in recruitment, and the role is to take responsibility for establishing creative environments. So they need full control of recruitment, and it has to be very high on the agenda. Good career opportunities, and one has to set up rules for mobility. A leadership has to regularly review and prioritize resources towards excellence. And if things start to idle in a departmental environment, one has to do something about it. Either close it down if it can't be cured, or try to fortify the environment by adding in new people, maybe new money. We need external competitive funding with long-term perspectives, and they have to have clear complementary missions. And when defining programs, the programs has to be broad, so we get a disciplinary spread. Here, I think Denmark has been particularly successful when we think of the Nordic countries. The base has to be support individuals or environments with novel ideas, and floor funding, external funding, should not fall below 3-2. So I think universities must take this message in order to foster the kind of excellence that we are talking about here. There is a complementary role between a university and an external funder. And I want to emphasize that an external funder can help being catalytic. But the role of an external funder, that is, first of all, to boost the creative environments established by the universities, established through recruitment and prioritization of their own resources. They have to build the unit, and then that unit can go for the external money. So the question is now, can our Nordic mass universities, as we see them in Sweden, Norway and Finland, also foster excellence at the highest international level? I think we can. We can take Denmark as an example. Denmark has done it with a combination of a strengthened academic leadership, with an emphasis on excellence in recruitment, and a determined long-term competitive support of individuals with novel ideas. That seems to be the trick if you want to go for excellence, defined by how you participate in the international discussion of advancement of science. And with that, I thank you for your attention.